Okay, so imagine a general gives his troops an order that just sounds, well, completely impossible.
Right.
He says, we're going to attack the strongest power in the world.
Uh-huh.
But first, we're going to walk across the highest, iciest mountain range in Europe.
It sounds like a work of fiction, but this is the story of Hannibal Barcas and his march over the Alps in 218 BC. He was a general for Carthage, Rome's big rival, and he was trying to do something Rome thought was, unthinkable.
And to really get this, we have to talk about his motivation, because it was so personal.
It really was. He was from the Barkas family, a huge military family. The name Barkas actually means lightning.
Which tells you everything you need to know about their fighting style, right? Fast and aggressive.
Exactly. His father, Hamilcar, was a famous general who had just lost a war against Rome. And there's this story, maybe a legend, that he made a young Hannibal swear an oath.
A permanent oath of hatred against Rome.
Yeah, so Hannibal's entire life was basically focused on one thing. He spent his youth in Spain, building up an army, gathering resources, all for that single goal.
Vengeance.
Vengeance. Which brings us to the big strategic problem he faced.
He needs to get his army to Italy. But he can't go by sea?
Right. Rome's navy completely controlled the Mediterranean. A naval invasion was suicide. They'd be sunk before they even saw the coast.
So he needed total surprise, a plan that no one in Rome would ever see coming.
And his solution was this huge, calculated risk, a land invasion coming from the north.
Which means marching from Spain all the way through what we now call France, which was Gaul back then.
And that's before they even get to the mountains. The idea was to just appear behind Roman lines where they had zero defenses.
The army he had was incredible.
Oh, it was a logistical headache just to think about. You had heavy infantry from Africa, fast Spanish cavalry, and the famous Numidian light cavalry.
A coalition of different peoples, different languages, all under one commander.
And then you have the shock troops, the war elephants.
We think of them as these ancient tanks, and they were terrifying. But just the logistics of moving 37 of them across a continent.
It's what makes this whole thing so incredible. But Hannibal knew he couldn't win just by fighting. His real goal was political.
He wasn't trying to just win one battle?
No. He believed if he could land a huge decisive blow on Roman soil, then Rome's allies, all these Italian cities and tribes they'd conquered, would switch sides.
Especially the Celts in northern Italy.
Exactly. So he had to keep this diverse army together on this insane journey, knowing that their success was the key to unlocking Rome's biggest weakness.
So the march itself was a message.
It was. It was about proving the impossible was possible. But first, they had to face the Alps.
And the Alps aren't just hills. They are a terrifying barrier. We're talking jagged peaks, some over 15,000 feet high, sheer, rocky slopes.
For an army back then, this was basically an impassable wall. The paths were narrow, they ran along these dangerous cliff sides, and they were often buried in snow.
And that snow could hide a sheet of ice or, 1,000-foot drop.
Plus, the weather is lethal. It can go from a clear day to a blinding snowstorm in minutes. And remember, they're carrying everything with them.
This was the biggest natural obstacle any army had ever tried to cross.
And the mountains weren't empty. They were controlled by local mountain tribes who were not friendly.
They knew every secret path, every good spot for an ambush. They saw this massive Carthaginian army as a target.
So Hannibal's real test begins in autumn of 218 BC. His troops start the climb, and they're already exhausted. They've just marched over 1,000 miles.
And right away, the altitude and the cold hit them.
You have to remember, many of these soldiers were from North Africa and Spain. They'd never felt temperatures below freezing before.
The air gets thinner. It's debilitating when you're carrying armor and supplies. Every step is a struggle.
And the cold just became this silent killer. The historical sources talk about frostbite being rampant. Men were losing fingers, toes.
They just weren't equipped for it. They were losing people to the environment before they even fought a major battle.
And the ground itself was a trap. A little bit of fresh snow would cover up old, hard ice. It was incredibly slippery.
So men, horses, pack animals, they're just losing their footing and falling into these deep ravines.
And because they're so high up, often above the tree line, there's no wood for fires. So that means freezing nights, no way to cook food. It just weakens everyone.
On top of all that, they're being attacked.
Constantly. The mountain tribes used guerrilla tactics. They wouldn't fight a pitched battle. They'd hit the army when it was stretched out in a long, vulnerable column.
We hear about them rolling huge boulders down the mountainsides.
Yeah, just crushing soldiers and animals below. So Hannibal couldn't just march. He had to fight for every 100 yards of path, sending scouts ahead to secure the ridges.
Okay, so let's talk about the engineering required for the elephants. I mean, moving a 6-ton animal on a narrow, icy path.
It's something a modern army would probably refuse to do. The animals' weight was a huge problem. The paths couldn't always support them.
So his engineers are constantly having to shore up the trail or even build new wooden ramps and bridges on the fly.
And the elephants' feet are made for flat, firm ground. Not ice. They were slipping constantly.
So why bring them? Why go to all that trouble?
Because of the psychological effect. Hannibal knew that even if only a few survived, the sight of a war elephant in Italy would be a terrifying symbol of his power. It would impress his new allies and panic the Romans.
After 9 days of this, 9 days of climbing and fighting, they finally reached the summit.
And Hannibal lets them rest for 2 days. This is where he shows his genius as a leader, not just a general.
His troops are broken. They're freezing. They're discouraged. They've lost thousands of men.
So he gives this famous speech. He gathers them together and points down into the distance toward the fertile plains of Italy's Po Valley.
The goal.
The goal. He tells them they are standing on the very gates of Rome. And seeing it, even from that far away, gave them the will to keep going.
But the descent was actually worse.
Much worse. The southern slopes were steeper and covered in even more dangerous slick ice.
So more men were lost going down than were lost climbing up. They were exhausted, starving, and now they're sliding down a death trap.
And then they hit their biggest obstacle. A landslide had completely wiped out the path. Just gone. A sheer drop into an abyss.
They can't go forward. They can't go back. The whole army is stuck.
So Hannibal orders them to build a new path, right into the solid rock of the cliff face.
And he uses this incredible technique. They build huge bonfires to heat the rock until it's glowing hot.
And then they pour liquid over it, probably a mix of sour wine or vinegar and water.
The sudden temperature change, the thermal shock cracks the superheated rock. It makes it brittle.
So then his men can break it apart with hammers and chisels. They are literally carving a new road into the side of a mountain in freezing conditions with no food.
It's just an unbelievable feat of desperation and will.
And when he finally reached the flatlands of northern Italy, his army was a shadow of what it had been. He'd lost nearly half of his force.
Tens of thousands of men gone. And only a handful of the elephants survived.
But they made it, and the impact was immediate. Rome went into a state of absolute panic. They had never planned for an invasion from the north.
And this is the proof of Hannibal's strategy. Even with a battered army, the shock of the crossing started to work. He immediately began recruiting soldiers from the local Celtic tribes who hated Rome.
That successful crossing was the move that started the Second Punic War in earnest. It proved that geography could be conquered by sheer determination.
And that depleted army was still incredibly effective.
Oh yeah. Within months, Hannibal won 2 huge battles at Trebia and Lake Trasimene. He kept Rome on the defensive in its own territory for 15 years.
And that's why he's remembered as one of history's greatest commanders, right up there with Alexander the Great. His tactics are still studied in military schools today.
I think the lesson here is about more than just military strategy. It's about what people can endure. If you can motivate a half-starved army to carve a road through a mountain with fire and vinegar,
it shows that even the biggest barriers can be overcome. Even when your enemy is the planet itself, brilliant leadership can find a way through.
good luck with your studies.